Hi, everybody. This is Annalisa. Today, I would like to talk about the shift of the Jupiter and Saturn that is taking place on the winter solstice on uh, December 21st, 2020. I'm not a philosopher, I'm not a historian, but what I am is I study a lot, I read a lot, I document a lot, and I'm very aware of the era that I'm in. But I'd like to discuss that in a lame language that we can all understand, and I'm not going to get that technical about it. Okay? But I do have to get a little technical because it serves the point. The conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter in the winter solstice of 2020. It's when the conjunct that conjunct of those two stars or planets they take place every 20 years. And the culture, when that takes place, the culture begins to mutate. There are some astronomers saying this is the closest one since 1623. Others saying that it is the tightest since 1226. I find it interesting that it was on air signs back then when we have been on Earth triplicity for the last 200 years. The great mutation, this cycle, Kepler, who was an astronomer and an astrologer, he explained it as this is a rotation, a movement of elements, of triplicities, of trigoons that work counterclockwise, okay? Changing from one to the other every 240 years, okay? It is, it has been on Earth, but it is in this conjunct is taking place in Aquarius. And for the next 200 years plus, about 240 years, we are going to be an air sign, but plus that every 20 years we will remain with that conjunct of that Jupiter and Saturn every 20 years. It will be on an air sign. It will be in a different air sign. Okay, it'll be this time it'll be in Aquarius. The next time it will be in another air sign. Okay, so when these periods take place, it's a transition that takes place back and forth in generations, in era and experiences. Kepler, also the astronomer, the astrologer, but studied deep these things, and he believed that the star of Bethlehem, may have been the code word. This star may have been the word for Jupiter and Saturn conjunct, which, as we all remember, that it is the star that guided the three kings to the birth of Jesus. Okay, so if we look back in 1981, where the first conjunct took place, the mean conjunct took place in the year 2000. And as we look back in 1981, the air triplicity begun. That was the foundation of it. That would bring the change now in 2020. Okay, so that triplicity of air began giving us the idea of the new world, and how everything in the future would look. And if we look back, we in 8081, the beginning, we start having that, we began to have that advent of IBM PC. And here's the IBM making a personal computer, okay? And then we had the MTV, as you well remember, the MTV still on, which began then, which was the 24 hours videos that we were getting and we're still getting. And And of course, we remember the wedding of Princess Diana and Prince Charles. So that was the launch of all of that. And that also launched the epic and the energy and the things. And through the 80s and the 90s, it launched that idea and that concept of what it is that we're going through right now. Okay? So that, for example, that wedding of Princess Diana and Prince Charles, at that time, the air sign was in Libra. In 1981, that conjunct of Saturn and Jupiter took place in Libra. So what is Libra? Libra is ruled by Venus, okay? Which Saturn is exalted. Saturn is exalted in Libra. Saturn is an air sign. If you like it or not, it's an air sign. Which Princess Diana and Prince Charles' wedding, that is the Venus creating, and Jupiter creating that element of the outsider and marrying the insider, which was Prince Charles. So that Venus with the Saturn conjunct exalted in Libra, Venus, that was a kind of wedding that that marriage that, you know, I'm not royalty blood, but I'm still marrying to royalty. That is the Saturn and the Jupiter conjunct effects. Okay, so as we move to the 80s, we saw all these kind of eccentric. The music, we people that understand music, yes, there has been great music, and there has been great, but the 80s was different. As we remember, the music was different, the themes were different. What is that? What is that? That was the outsiders and insiders. MTV played videos and played music of people. Unless we didn't have the MTV, they would never been heard of. Like Manson or something like that, that singer. But there's also a great great music too that really depicted or really explained a new era, which was an album by The Police, which was Spirit or versus Machine or something like that. But there's that album out. I don't. Please don't correct me on my grammar, but it is the Spirit versus Machine or something. There's an album. So if you go back to the 80s, the album by The Police, it explains it. So we were already getting the message of what our future is going to be like. So the outsiders and the insiders. What is the outsiders and insiders? Is people that, you know, want to belong and want to be into that space of the insiders, which is the people that hold the great power, the people that hold the great fame, the people that hold the dynasties, all of those epics that the outsiders want to be the insiders and so forth. The music was so it depicted it explained the era that we were entering, that era, that Aquarian era. No, I don't believe fully in the Aquarian age, because I do believe by the history that I read and by the studies that have been done It doesn't exist. It is a form of, uh, in the history, a form of organizing the masses, the religions, especially in France in 16 or 7, in the era of the 1600s or 1700s. They really had to put that out there, uh, that people started believing in separation of religions, especially especially the Christian religion had to have control over things. So here we have the music. There's has been, well, Lennon, the Beatles, his music, his music is so soulful. That's already explaining us humans, the detachment that is coming, because air is emotional detachment. So those people that really like the hugs and that intimacy of the human intimacy will somehow be affected, because there is this theme that the internet will take over everything. Technology will take over in such an extreme fashion that human intimacy will be a real challenge. Okay, so but it will be spirit versus the machine. But I know that I'm scattering and I'm going all over the place, uh, but why I feel such an urge or need to kind of explain this to people is because of my own desires that I also have for some explanations that I feel as well. Um, Back in 1993, there was a movie made by Sylvester Stallone and Sandra Bullock. I think it was called Demolition Man, um, which was Sandra Bullock, Sylvester Stallone, and Snipers. I don't know his first name, but Wooly or something like that. So it's called Demolition Man. I watched that movie, and I tell you, that was in 1993, because you remember that the triplicity of air, even though we were still on Earth rulership, the triplicity of air began in 1981, and we've been there since. But that going back to that movie scared me to pieces, and and I wondered for years and years. I said, that wasn't a big hit movie, that wasn't a big deal, but for me it was, because I was still very much in the Earth things. And we know what the Earth have done. Really, what the Earth have done. The Earth's triplicity has really. We've been living in this kind of a place where we've been destroying, we've been materialized, we've been living in these elements of more and material and all of that. So now it's a culture that somehow is now changing to other themes. It's other themes. It's, as I said, it's the machine. It's the spirit versus the machine, and go back to 80s and listen to that album from the Police, which is wonderful. But we changed. So that movie kind of really challenged me emotionally and mentally, of believing that, okay, this is the future, and it scares me. And I feel that a lot of people are very uncertain and very afraid of what the next 240 years will be like. Some of us will live the next 20, some of us will live next 40, and I look at my grandchildren, hopefully they'll live for the next 80 years. So it is a change, it is a shift, it's a shift of an era. And as Kepler and other philosophers and researchers and academics believe that this is the time that great dynasties, um, other governed powers take place, um, other um, prophets are born at these conjunctions that change the world. So we could possibly have the next savior or the next prophet being born with this conjunct. Because as history shows, the Star of Bethlehem, which is Kepler, the astronomer and astrologer, deeply believes that was the conjunct of the Saturn and Jupiter. The Magi, which led the Magis to Jesus, the birth of Jesus Christ. So they believe that the new prophets, the weather patterns will shift, that new dynasties will be established, the new powers of governing would be established, and so forth. So this is what I believe that this shift is all about. And history has shown us that's what it is all about. I hope that I translated this. I know that I was scattered all over the place, and I know that I said a lot, but I don't want to keep this video too long. So I tried to bring it up in the lamest way that I could, that it could be understood, and I hope that it is understood. Again, we live in triplicities. For the last 200 years, we have been living under the Earth triplicity. In 1981, the shift to air triplicity started taking place. 81, I believe it was in 1980, because I looked in the families around that. In the 2000, we went into a mean conjunct, which means that we are already in total the triplicity of air. And this conjunct here in 2020 is the total beginning of that triplicity, which means that we are going to enter a new era, a new theme, a new way of life. And the old, which was Earth, will have to somehow be part of history, but the new future will be the air triplicity. We have it, right? We got it. So I hope so. I hope that I explained it well. And I wish you well, my friends. I have a website, metaphysicalcove.com. And of course, you must be watching this from YouTube, because Instagram and Facebook don't allow these long videos. I wish you well, my friend. Have a wonderful new era.